In the 1990s, the AFL was going through a period of change. New expansion teams were joining the league, and as a result, discussions were being held about possible relocation or mergers of existing teams in the league. One of these was the merger between Melbourne and Hawthorn that came very close to actually happening at the end of 1996. Now obviously this didn't happen, and Melbourne and Hawthorn are still around as separate teams in the AFL today. But in this video, we're going to take a look at what that team may have looked like had that merger actually gone through. So the first thing we have to work out is the name of this team. What would this team be called? And I think it's pretty obvious that you've got to use the name Melbourne for their location. It's one of the major cities of Australia, and it would just be wrong if there wasn't a Melbourne team in the league. So you've got to go with Melbourne. That obviously means that the team nickname will take Hawks from Hawthorn, making the new team Melbourne Hawks. As for the team colours, well, we've got 4 options to work with here. We've got Melbourne's navy blue and red, and Hawthorn's brown and gold. Personally, I think it'd be a bit of a mess to try and make these 4 colours work together. So we've got to start taking away some colours. I think the first one you get rid of is brown. Get rid of the brown, and that leaves us with blue, red and gold. Now I'm pretty sure these were the 3 colours that they were actually going to go with had this merger actually gone through. But personally, I think you've got to get rid of the blue as well. This was in the mid-90s, so by this time the Adelaide Crows were around, and navy blue, red and gold are just their colours. So to make this team truly unique, I say we get rid of the blue, make it a true 50-50 split, leaving us with red from Melbourne and the gold from Hawthorn. And yes, this does steal the Gold Coast Suns colours, and I'm not trying to offend the 5 Gold Coast supporters that are out there, but remember, this merger would have happened in the mid-90s, long before Gold Coast were even being considered. So in this reality, the team colours for the Melbourne Hawks are red and gold. And now with the team name and colours decided upon, we can unveil the logo for the new team, the Melbourne Hawks. And so now we move on to the Guernseys for this team. The home and away jumpers. What would this team actually look like out there on the field? So for the home jumper, I'm starting off with a red base jumper with gold collars and cuffs. Now remember when I said about stealing Gold Coast colours and all that? Well, they should pay attention, because we're about to create something that's a hell of a lot better than what Gold Coast ended up with. Maybe they could learn a thing or two. As this is a merger between 2 teams, we've got to take inspiration from the iconic Guernseys from both clubs. So the most important elements of each team's Guernseys, I feel, is the red yoke from Melbourne's jumper and the gold stripes from the Hawthorn jumper. So we'll take these elements and put them into the new colour scheme on this home jumper, and we've got a red yoke with a bit of gold lining just below it, and then under that some gold stripes, which I think works really well to create a truly 50-50 split between the Guernseys. This is a more true merger between the 2 teams. You know, you've got both jumpers represented on the new home Guernsey. So with the home Guernsey done, we now move on to the away jumper. And for this, I think it's pretty simple. You just go with the inverse. So to start this one off, we're going to have a gold base for this Guernsey with red collars and cuffs. I think gold jumpers look great. We've seen a few examples of this over the last few years with teams like West Coast and Richmond and Brisbane taking on clash or secondary jumpers that have gold in them, or gold as their main colour, and they look really good. So why the Gold Coast Suns have never had a gold clash jumper is just beyond me. I have no idea what they're doing over there, but I don't think they do either, so it doesn't matter. This video has kind of become like an unintentional roast of the Gold Coast Suns, which was not the plan, but whatever. So anyway, we've got our away jumper with the gold base. We're going to have some red stripes down the bottom and a gold yoke. One question I have about this is, does it take away from the heritage? You know, we talked about the Melbourne jumper and taking that iconic red yoke from the top of that Guernsey. And I just kind of wonder, does changing the colour of that from red to gold for the away jumper, does that kind of ruin the heritage of the Guernsey? I did try this with having a red yoke on a gold based jumper. It did still kind of make the overall Guernsey look mostly red, which is kind of not what you want for like an away or clash jumper. So we're gonna have to go with gold for this yoke. Hopefully that doesn't really take away too much from the Melbourne heritage and the actual point of having that iconic element of their home jumper. And to finish it off, we're going to have the classic white shorts with this one. I kind of wonder whether it actually looks better with gold shorts. And I've thought the same thing about like a number of those teams we mentioned who have gold Guernseys as their clash jumpers. Take West Coast, for example. Would it be better if they wore it with blue shorts? You know, Guernseys always look better when you've got the full kit in a kind of matching color, and having the white shorts kind of takes away from that, but I think it still works. So So there we've got the identity for this new team, the Melbourne Hawks, with their logo, their colours, and their home and away jumpers. It's also pretty interesting to think what kind of impact this merger going through would have had on these teams and the AFL as a whole. If this had happened, would it have affected the Fitzroy-Brisbane merger? Both of those teams were kind of struggling financially at that time, and especially Fitzroy, so you kind of think, well, they would have needed to do something. Either Fitzroy would have folded and the Bears would have gone on, or maybe that merger still happens regardless. And also, what would a merger between two teams from the same state actually do to like crowd numbers and stuff like that? Would that see a massive increase in their supporter base? You'd think it would. Or would you see like a fair few fans drop off because they feel their club's gone and they've lost their identity? And the other thing to think about is, how would this affect the AFL in Tasmania? As we know, in about 2001, Hawthorn started playing a number of their home games in Tasmania, and they've had a pretty strong presence there ever since. Now, you would think they probably signed that deal for the financial benefits it gave them, but had they merged with Melbourne, suddenly those financial problems probably weren't as big a deal as they otherwise were. So you would think this new team probably wouldn't have signed that Tasmania deal. Then the question is, does that lack of a presence, the lack of Hawthorn's presence in Tasmania, does that therefore strengthen the case or maybe fast track a Tasmanian team in the AFL? And it's all these things that make it interesting to wonder, what would have happened had this merger gone through. So guys, let us know down in the comments below what you think of this team and these designs. Are you happy the merger didn't go through? Are you glad to keep the traditions of both clubs alive? Or do you think the AFL would be better to have one less Victorian team? Also, make sure you let us know down below what other things you'd like to see us explore in the AFL What If series. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, we'll see you later.